Our guest this episode on the left, Christopher LeMar. On the right, Justin Costa. Thank you for joining us. Issue 1, our very own Senator Elizabeth Warren, who was just re-elected on a landslide victory this past November, has announced that she is taking the first steps to run for president. Will Senator Warren be able to take her electoral success she has achieved in Massachusetts to the national stage and capture the Democratic nomination for president? Michael.
I mean, look, the Republicans and the Trump supporters want her to, but fact is that you see this all the time, especially this period, this time in the election cycle. People who announce now, these become the fringe candidates. These become the candidates that we forget about. Maybe she will be a candidate. Maybe she will throw her hat in the ring. She'll be one of 10 or 12, and she won't last through South Carolina.
Justin.
I don't think that she'll make a good candidate for the states at all because she's too far left and she's not center enough. So she won't get all the states that she's going to need versus someone like Polis or, a more centered candidate may get those.
Chris.
So before I came on here, I actually did some digging through some poll numbers on her, and a poll taken back by Politico in August had her at a 4-point advantage over Trump. A more recent poll by Axios had her up by 2 points over Trump. And a North Carolina poll actually done a week ago had her dead even. So I think the reality of an Elizabeth Warren candidacy is there's a lot of work to do if she wants to be viable. I don't think she's going to have quite the hill to climb that, say, Hillary Clinton did. I don't think being a woman is a barrier here for her, and she doesn't have the personal issues. But I don't think she resonates quite the same with independent voters that she may need to, and I think that's going to be a big problem because she'll capture all the Democratic states. That's not the problem. But how is she going to do in the purple states? Can she swing any of the important red states? And I'm not convinced yet that she can do that.
Cindy.
I actually agree with Chris. I think as far as the liberal states, I think she'll be she'll have a lot of fans, so she'll have no problem with that. But one thing that I did notice is in Massachusetts, she got 60% of the vote in this past election. Governor Baker, on the other hand, a Republican in Massachusetts, got 68% of the vote, for those two races. So when you compare in her own state, she didn't do as well as I would have expected, to be honest. So when she gets out in those red states, I don't think she's got a chance, to be honest.
You raised a point, Michael, and you said that about Elizabeth Warren, that the ones that get in that Trump wants, the Trump people want her to get the nomination. If you think back to 2016, all the Democrats wanted Trump to get the nomination. Don't we live in a more polarized society right now where someone as polarizing as Donald Trump can get elected? Why not someone as polarizing as Elizabeth Warren on the opposite end of it?
Very simple, because the polarizing effect doesn't work quite as well with liberals than it does with conservatives, because conservatives can appeal to emotions easier when they talk about those hot button polarizing issues. When it comes to liberals, they just don't, the set of issues make it much harder to appeal to those raw emotions. So I see your point. And sure, hindsight being 2020, Trump ended up being the candidate that brought it home. I just don't see that working in the inverse. And by the way, when I say that about Warren, I'm not saying that I'm not knocking her ability as a senator. She'll have that job as a senator in Massachusetts as long as she wants it, and she may do right by the citizens of Massachusetts. I just don't feel she has the national appeal.
How about fundraising? She's raised. Already, she has raised funds from all 50 states. She has, and what that tells me, and anyone can jump in here, is that she has very strong name recognition. And when you have a large field, and you're probably going to have over a dozen Democrats, like last time you had a dozen Republicans, we had to break up the debates into the A list and to the B list. Is anyone else going to be able to get oxygen in that room? And does she, because of her name recognition, does she automatically really become, does that make her a front runner because of her name recognition, because of her money in a very large field?
I would say possibly. For her, it's going to depend. Does Bernie Sanders run, and does he run as a Democrat? If he does, the enthusiasm goes to him, which includes the very passionate, strong fundraising base he had that let him raise hundreds of millions of dollars without taking large contributions. Now, if Bernie stays out of it, she's actually in a good place to capture some of that fundraising enthusiasm because, again, one of the things I looked at about her was her fundraising. 55% of her total donations in her entire career have come from small individual donors. That can give her an air of authenticity that I don't play the same game of taking all the money from corporations and wealthy individuals that Bernie had, and that can help her build on that support to increase her fundraising, making her more of a threat. So quite possibly, yes, but I think it hinges on whether or not Bernie announces, and if she can capture that enthusiasm he had.
The name recognition with her can actually also help hurt her because she's already been used as a pawn in Trump's game. If we really look at this, he's already had a set of attack since his 2016 campaign against Hillary Clinton. So that's he already has a plan on how to defeat her. But she would probably become the de facto Democratic nominee because of her name recognition and the money she's already pulling in, which may not be best for the Democratic Party or us as a nation if we want to go towards that direction. I have a feeling that if she gets a more centrist vice president, she may be a better candidate in all.
If you were Elizabeth Warren and you got the nomination, who would you pick for a vice presidential nominee?
My favorite is the governor of, what is it? Jared Polis. He's a governor, I want to say it's like Utah or Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah, I love Jared Polis.
For you, if you were Elizabeth Warren, who would you pick for a running mate?
Am I playing politics or playing towards my own?
Playing to
personal-
win.
Playing to win?
You're playing to win. That's the purpose of running.
I would probably look towards someone like a Kamala Harris or a Cory Booker.
Who would you pick if you were Elizabeth Warren?
You only pick a vice president if you come close to winning the convention, right?
Well, if she's a nominee.
Yeah, she ain't gonna get past South Carolina.
Okay,
You know,
that's what you
she-
said
she'll
about
be in
Trump,
the-
though.
she'll be in the
That's
two-
what-
she'll
that's what
be in
we
the
were all-
2%ers.
That's what we were all saying about
I
Trump.
did not say that about Trump.
I can see her picking a Kamala Harris, somebody like that.
The correct answer is Julian Castro.
Oh, God almighty.
Oh, yes.
Issue 2. As we charge toward the pivotal 2020 election, would it be wise for the Democrats to run on a centrist platform or a progressive one? Justin.
I would definitely say a centrist platform. America is right now separated very far to the left and very far to the right. If you go too far as a progressive platform, you're going to lose all the independents that are in that centrist. We have to bring ourselves together in one way or another. And running on the progressive is just going to split us up even further.
Christopher.
I suspect I'm going to be the only one with this opinion here, but you need to take that neoliberal centrist incrementalism and toss it in the trash. It doesn't work. 10 years ago, the Democrats held the House, the Senate, the White House. Fast forward 10 years later, they only hold the House, they've lost the White House, the Senate, the majority of governorships, they've lost state legislatures, and got demolished in the 2016 election by the weakest candidate I've seen in my lifetime. Offering to tweak the edges at a time of massive systemic inequality isn't the solution. There was a time in the past when the Democrats led with bold vision. The New Deal era Democrats dominated politics for 30 years by dreaming big and trying to make it happen. I mean, you live in an era now where a poll I saw from Reuters had 70% of the American public supporting Medicare for all. That is the kind of policy, the kind of public support that you can build a platform and massive support around. So, no, I think they need to steer into the progressivism, not necessarily everything. But this idea that you can just tweak the edges and call it a day, no, that's not what the American people are looking for. We saw that with Donald Trump, and we saw that with the enthusiasm when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016.
Follow that, Cindy.
I think I would prefer them go closer to the center because I would like to be able to look at a Democrat candidate seriously. But I think if the future of the Democrats, the younger generation that are leaning towards Democrats are progressive, and I think that's the direction the party's going to end up going. I'm not ready for it yet, but I suspect that's where it's going to go. So I'd like to see them go to the center, and then let's gradually work our way towards that progressive.
Chris, you said something I agree with. But
It's bound to happen eventually.
bold and centrists are not opposites. Bold and centrists are not opposite. JFK was a centrist. Bill Clinton was a centrist. Okay? Jimmy Carter, at the time, given the times, was a centrist, okay, but offered a bold choice. Carter, in terms of being an outsider. Kennedy, of saying literally, we're going to the moon. Bill Clinton, in terms of saying things that you had not heard Democratic candidates say for 10 years prior. So I agree with you on the boldness. Just in terms of the political philosophy, okay, like it or not, and the system we have with the Electoral College, we need to appeal to the purple states. And can populist elements, can liberal elements appeal to Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan? Yes, but you go too far to the left, you definitely lose those states. And so that's why I agree with you on the boldness. I agree with you on the principles. I agree with you on the taking of a stand. But I also agree that there could be a centrist candidate, a so-called centrist candidate, that complies with that.
I don't know that I necessarily see that there's any candidate out there that's more towards the center that would offer that kind of bold vision. And I'm not saying you can't think bold from the center. I'm saying I don't see it right now. I haven't seen it for a while, and it's certainly not what the Democrats have offered recently. To kind of make my point, if you had 100 Republicans here right now and you asked them, what does the Republican Party stand for? You would probably get a huge percentage telling you low taxes, pro-military, deregulation, anti-abortion, those kind of things. Take 100 Democrats, sit them in a room, ask them what the Democratic Party stands for, you're probably going to get 100 different answers. There's no bold vision in their centrist ways that they've been going about for the last decade. What's the agenda? What's the plan? They haven't thought big. They haven't fought big. I mean, think about it. Their signature accomplishment in all this neoliberal centralism of the last 10 years was the Affordable Care Act, a Heritage Foundation idea supported by Richard Nixon from 40 years ago. That is their bold vision. That's as far as it got them. And after they instituted that, they started hemorrhaging it at every level of government. They're not bold enough, not by far.
But can't you be bold and aspirational? But you can go two different directions being bold and aspirational. You can go progressive or you can be a populist. Because populism is also bold. It can also be aspirational. And being a populist can get those votes in those Midwestern states, in the Rust Belt, in those purple states that progressives may not be able to get.
But do we know for a fact that they can't? I mean, in those purple states and red states, the Democrats tend to run Republican light. They've rarely, if ever, tried to actually run a progressive in there, to fund them, to support them, to see what happens. They're usually either conceding it or, again, trying to offer up, oh, here's somebody who's a lot like the Republican that you vote for. Just kind of vote for him, but we're just a little to the left, usually on social issues.
Didn't we see this in history before, though? Right now we see the millennials rising up because, Bernie Sanders came up, and Bernie Sanders appealed to a generation by promising to give them free everything, and they put down their video game controllers and went out and voted and got involved. Now, this happened before. In a different circumstance with the Vietnam War, where young people, college students, really became active, they became involved, and they were very liberal, as college students are. And they got their way, and they nominated George McGovern. And George McGovern was bold, he was aspirational, he was very progressive, he was very liberal, he was the darling of the college crowd. How many states did George McGovern win?
One.
Okay. They tried it again in 1984 with Walter Mondale in reaction to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was too conservative. So the young people rose up and they nominated Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro from the progressive wing of the party. How many states did Walter Mondale win? One. So why would it be different this time?
The times they are a-changin'. You got to recognize where we're at as a country. We have the highest level of income inequality since the Gilded Age. The middle class has had stagnant wages for decades. They're shrinking. The vast majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And while, yes, McGovern lost and Mondale lost, there was one guy that they ran out there on this idea that, hey, we should actually have a living wage. Hey, we should actually have something for you there at the end of your life when you die. Hey, we should tax the rich fairly. That guy won so many times they put in term limits to make sure he couldn't win again. That was FDR. And again, the bold vision he started led to 30 years of dominance by the New Deal coalition. So can it work? Absolutely. Can it sometimes not work? Sure, but given where we are as a country right now, I think you're better off dreaming bold and trying that, because we saw what happened with the let's just tweak the edges candidate. She lost to Donald Trump.
Was she really let's just tweak the edges candidate? I mean, she had no real ideas out there. That they weren't bold. They were just, let's just go continue on with this path, keep going forward.
Did they really beat her on issues, though? They beat her by demonizing her, by painting her as a criminal, as a murderer. They didn't. That had nothing about issues.
She had nothing to offer when she got up there and she spoke. Like he said, she didn't offer any new ideas. Everything was about let's just carry on. She had this attitude that she was entitled to this position. She had done her time, and now it just come to me. I just expect to win. And she just was stunned that she lost. And
So
it's
you
like,
make my point. It was about her attitude. It was about
her
her
whole
personality.
attitude,
That's how
and
they beat her. It wasn't on issues.
Things were
Yeah, but
going
she
pretty
had
well
no
in
issues.
2016. God forbid you say, hey, let's try to continue what we've been doing.
But you have to
she
remember,
had no issues.
She, at one point during the election or during the campaign, sat there and said, I think America is pretty great as it is. And it is great for her, for the rich, for the people who funded her. But the people in Michigan, Ohio, who've seen their jobs shipped overseas for decades, the people who no longer have union protections, the people struggling to live paycheck to paycheck all across this country, it isn't great for them. So when the Democrats candidate sits there and says, I think America's great the way it is, while millions of people are struggling, that comes across as tone deaf at best.
You can't do anything bold, you can't do anything aspirational if you don't win. You have to win. That's something that Bill Clinton understood. So let me ask you this. If you put a Bernie Sanders type or an Elizabeth Warren type or a Kamala Harris type, and you put them in there as the nominee, and they're running on this left-wing agenda talking about gun control and 37 genders and free college for everyone and free this and free that and free that,
And
which everyone else
everybody's a
pays
racist.
for, and everybody's a racist. How is the Democrats going to pick up the electoral votes they need in places like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Florida and North Carolina? These are places where you have blue-collar, lunch bucket, working-class people, older people who vote. How do you win them over with a progressive candidate?
Under the way you're talking, you don't win. One of the mistakes Hillary Clinton made, one of the mistakes Democrats have made, is steering into this idea of identity politics. You can't paint everybody who doesn't agree with you as just being a bigot. Everyone who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton was not a misogynist. Yes, some were, but not everybody wasn't. Everybody who doesn't support a minority candidate isn't by default a bigot. You need to understand what appeals to them. You cannot shame voters into supporting you. That doesn't work. So yes, if they tried it at that way, it wouldn't work. But if you go to the same people who are disenfranchised at the system, the same struggling, say, white middle class, who turned to Trump looking for support and said to them, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's our idea for a jobs program. Here's idea to get you a living wage, to make sure you have health care. These are our bold visions for it. You don't have to steer into this idea of you've got to be white and a racist. Appeal to their economics. It's the economy, stupid. It's like the old saying goes. You need to appeal to people's wallets. And you can't do it through shame.
Which was said by James Carville, about as centrist of a Democrat as you can get.
Okay, and he made a valid point. But again,
And it got Bill Clinton elected.
it did get Bill Clinton elected twice. I'm not disputing that Clinton
And it helped
was
Trump
good.
get elected because that's, he promised to
Putin helped Trump get elected.
to do the trade agreements, to cut taxes. Those were issues that were important to people, and he appealed to people in that sense.
He appealed to the very worst in people, and that's how he appealed to the most basest of emotions.
At the
in
time,
people.
there was a choice. Hillary
there was,
or Trump. Trump at least had some ideas. Hillary had nothing, but she was entitled to the position.
Trump also had an anti-establishment appeal. Now, the guy's a con
the
artist. He was
populist,
full of it.
the populist appeal.
Yeah, Trump was full of it, though. The guy was a con artist. But for the people who feel rightly disenfranchised by a system that they rightly believe doesn't care about them, they viewed him as a Molotov cocktail to toss through the front window at the establishment.
Blow it up and start over.
So not everybody
he's
who voted
certainly
for
blowing
Trump,
it up.
but not everyone who voted for him was because their base racist instincts were being appealed to. They're angry. People are really angry out there. You can appeal to that through the authoritarianism populism of Trump or reform populism, which someone like Bernie Sanders offers.
So now everybody's getting it out, right? They're getting out all their frustration. They're getting out all their hate. There's chaos every day. We're 2 years into it. And I'm starting to see people, even that voted for him, really get tired of it and say enough is enough. We need to have some sort of normalcy. The stock market's on a roller coaster every time he opens his mouth. It's the government shut down. 2 years from now, another 2 years from this, is there going to be enough fatigue in this country, Trump fatigue, that people are going to say, look for a candidate that says, you know what, even if I don't agree with him on issues, I'm looking for someone that can bring people together and work together and try to get things done again? Is that going to be more important than issues in 2020?
I think in 2020, if they don't run a centrist, it's not going to be more important because he's still going to appeal to that base emotion in people, that he can still bring something better. And if things go, he could just, people forget very quickly everything that happened yesterday, the day before. A month from now, we're not going to
Who's the Democrats' best bet?
I'm looking at Booker because he's somewhat left, but he does have.
You think he'd be the Democrats' best bet?
I think so.
Michael, who's the Democrats' best bet going up?
Starts with a B, but not Booker. That would be Joe Biden.
Cindy, who would be the Democrats?
I'd almost have to say Biden myself.
Bernie Sanders.
The answer is Joe Biden. Issue 3. The government shutdown continues. Donald Trump insists he will not sign any funding bill that does not include the $5.6 billion for his wall. Congressional leaders are just as adamant that there will be no money for his wall. At some point, one side is going to need to blink. Which side is it going to be? What side should it be? Chris?
The person who needs to blink the most is Trump. This has been the signature thing he has harped on for, almost 4 years now? He needs to win this, but he can't really win it. He's never going to get the funding for the wall. So my guess, I think he blinks when they offer him, we'll do some repair work and throw in some new fencing and you can call it a win. I think he'll get something like that and chalk it up as a win because he's never going to get that 1,900-mile tribute to his ego he so desperately wants.
Cindy?
I disagree. I think it's going to be the Democrats. I think they're going to, after a while, because he's adamant he's going to stick this out, and he's got the attitude that he doesn't care. He'll just keep it shut down, and eventually the Democrats it'll start to affect them because people will be looking to them to be the voice of reason of, all right, just give it to them and let's get this thing going, and if they don't, then it'll start to hurt the Democrats.
That's the
and I think he will hold out.
Michael?
I have to disagree strongly with Cindy. I agree with Chris on one condition, though. Okay, if this is not done by executive order, that what Chris described as the outcome. But if he tries this executive order crap and just declares a state of emergency and basically suspends the Constitution, these Republicans and these Trump supporters, they're really strict constitutionalists, except when their guy's in charge, So if he does an end around and builds this big concrete edifice, with the military, maybe he'll be happy that he built something and then he'll end it, okay? But if he doesn't do that, it'll go the way Chris says.
Justin?
Day one, when this first opened up, I said the 16th would be the day that they would come back because I thought that they could come together. As of the other day on CNN, watching both parties talk to each other or talk to us as a nation, he was very strict and he was not going to move. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are not going to move. We're looking at a protracted, maybe into February, before we start seeing us open up. And I think it's going to have to be both sides are going to have to blink because there's no way they're both going to allow the other one to win.
So the Democrats are saying that they want to reach a deal. They want to compromise. They are open to putting additional money in for border security, but not a wall. So the other day, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer went to the White House. They sat down, and Trump said, "Are you going to give me my $5.6 billion for the wall?" And they said, "No." And he got up and walked out. Is that the way to get things done?
No, but I think he has compromised in the sense that, originally he was talking about a concrete wall. And they said, we're not putting up a concrete wall. And he said, well, then we'll call it a fence, whatever you want. We'll change it to steel, open steel. And they said, no, we're not doing that either. So it's like, give and take. Give the guy a section of wall. or a fence, whatever it is. And at the same time, though, instead of kicking the can down the road, now's the time to deal with immigration. Because this has been going on for years. They keep going back and forth, and they keep funding bills for whatever, and nothing ever gets resolved.
He's not talking about immigration reform. He's not talking about E-Verify, expanding that to small
He's trying
employers
to
and
close
making it
the border
mandatory.
first,
No, he's
and
trying to
then
build
work-
himself a monument.
Did you
He's
say
trying to build
compromise
himself a
by giving
monument.
him what he wants? That's
Well, no, I'm just saying, there has to be. He wanted $50 billion. He's down to $5 billion.
To start with.
to start.
with.
No, that's the down
So
payment.
you give him the
It's the
$5
down
billion and
payment.
then tell him you're all done, and then at least he can say, "I got my $5 billion. I built my wall."
saying about giving
Meanwhile,
somebody
the
an
debt's at
inch.
$22 trillion, the most it has ever been. And
Yeah,
all
it
of a
was
sudden-
already doubled
all
by
of a sudden-
Obama.
All of a sudden, conservatives don't care about the debt anymore. It is the highest it has ever been in the history
Of
of
course,
this
and it's
country.
going to continue to get higher even when the next Democrat's in office. The debt doesn't go down; it goes up. So, and Obama left office, it was $20 trillion.
Why is it
he
when
doubled the debt?
President Obama cut the budget deficit by 70%.
And he inherited a
Doubled the debt.
massive deficit from George W. Bush. He didn't walk into office with a balanced budget. There was already a $1 trillion deficit when W left office. Can we please not pretend that this was entirely Obama's fault? Yeah, a good chunk of it is, but let's put some context on it.
Because they keep suspending the pay-as-you-go rules, and that's why we keep adding more debt to everything instead of actually paying our bills as we go.
Well, it doesn't help that we keep cutting taxes. How many tax cuts do we do year after year? You can't cut your revenue while you expand your spending. We can't send $700 billion on the military as we give $1 trillion tax cuts. I mean, that's just basic math.
We can and we did.
Okay, fine. We shouldn't, but we do.
Okay, but we
And they're
but-
sitting
but
there
we
in
all-
the cushy chairs, and we're sitting here, so I don't know who's the student.
And the thing is it's the Democrats and the Republicans. Anybody who was at this table, if you're telling me anything different, you're full of it. Because the Democrats up there in Washington are just as bought and paid for as everybody else.
there-
They
is there-
can
is
sit
there
there and
possibility-
say they're for the people. They are for their people.
I was saying, is there a possibility that with this government shutdown, it could end by not somebody blinking, but by the old shell game? We're already seeing, we say, well, there's going to be no refund. The IRS can't send out any refunds because the government shut down. So all of a sudden, now both sides saying, well, we can fund that portion so they can get refunds. And they're talking about TSA
And then next
and
thing you know,
security.
it slowly
well,
gets
we'll
opened
fund
up on
that.
its own.
Yeah, they'll just
And next thing you know, we get
fund
all
it
the spending
piecemeal.
bills, and we just pretend it, and then it's open. And we
But
don't
he
know
still
what
has
it's
to sign that. He still has to sign those continuing resolutions.
Yeah,
Which
but
he
he
says
will
he is,
slowly,
right.
a step at a time. And next thing you know, all the national parks are open. And everybody's like, "What happened to the shutdown?" I don't know. It went away on its own.
I actually think that's pretty plausible because here's the thing. Let's say Trump actually stuck to his whole "I'll let this go on for months and years" things. Any of the Democratic candidates worth their salt will bash him over the head repeatedly with that little clip from when he met with Chuck Schumer and said, "This is on me. I will own the shutdown." They will put that on repeat 24/7. And after months and years of people being furloughed with no paycheck, if he actually sticks to his guns, it's going to pulverize him in the general election.
The biggest hit on Democrats, the biggest criticism that we've seen on Democrats is they have no spine, that they've been spineless, that
Correct.
they weren't strong. Can they give in and give him his wall?
If they're
Politically.
If they're smart, they will do exactly what Mitch McConnell and the Republicans did when Obama was in office: become the party of no. You just get
And
to
then
be
you just
against
continue and cycle
everything.
after
But they're putting the spending proposals on his desk. They're passing them, and if he vetoes them, it's on him. The polling shows this is more and more on him.
Mm-hmm.
So, no one thinks he blinks though.
I don't think so.
Now of his body
Well,
language.
I don't know. Chris's first scenario was pretty much a blink. I mean, just there wasn't really a wall, but just kind of made it seem like one. I think it could end that way.
I think he'll blink but call it a win.
Yeah.
Because that's how he views everything.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
Chris LeMar, Justin Costa, thank you for joining us. That'll do it for this episode of Flap TV. Bye-bye.